When I sat down to process everything that happened at the Critics' Choice Awards this year, I realized it wasn't even really about who won and who lost, because the trophies almost felt secondary to the emotional subtext playing out in real time. It felt like one of those nights where you could visibly see careers shifting, narratives closing, and new ones being quietly locked into place, whether the people involved were ready for that or not. The room itself felt tense and buzzy, like everyone knew something bigger than just an awards show was unfolding, and the cameras caught more truth than people probably intended. The clearest example of that, for me, was Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner. Because whether you love them together, hate them together, or feel indifferent, you can't deny that their presence carried a gravity that followed them the entire night. When Timothée's category came up, I actually caught myself holding my breath. And that wasn't because I was rooting against anyone else, but because you could tell this moment mattered to him in a way that went beyond ego or headlines. The shot of him and Kylie sitting there before his name was announced felt raw in a way award shows rarely allow anymore. Kylie looked visibly nervous, not performative nervous, but real, like someone who cares deeply and doesn't know where to put that energy. Timothée looked like someone trying to keep it together while his brain was probably moving a mile a minute, and when he won, the reaction didn't feel rehearsed or strategic. It felt like relief colliding with disbelief. That alone would have been enough to carry the moment. But then he got on stage and did something he has very intentionally avoided doing for years, which is publicly anchoring Kylie Jenner into his narrative without hedging or softening it. He thanked his partner of 3 years, said he loved her, and framed her as part of the foundation that made his work possible. That's not a casual shout-out, and it's definitely not something you do unless you're comfortable standing in it. What made it hit harder for me is that just days earlier, at Palm Springs, he didn't mention her at all. That contrast told me this wasn't about habit or impulse, it was a choice. He decided that this night, in this room, with this win, was when he was ready to let that part of his life be visible on his own terms. And you could see Kylie receiving it in real time, mouthing, "I love you" back, not for the cameras, but because that's what you do when someone says your name like that in a room full of people. It was intimate without being theatrical, which is rare in celebrity culture now. Of course, the internet immediately spun that moment into engagement rumors and future speculation. And while I'm not saying that's where this is headed, I do think moments like that don't happen in relationships that are unstable or half-hearted. It felt settled, grounded, and emotionally aligned, which honestly explains why it resonated so much. The other thing I noticed was how quietly the so-called drama around Odessa Zion dissolved that night. There's been this low-level buzz online trying to pit her against Kylie, mostly because people love inventing jealousy narratives when a male star works closely with a female co-star. But when you actually watched their interaction, there was nothing there except ease. Kylie fixing Odessa's hair, them posing together, the complete absence of tension, it all read as normal, adult, unbothered behavior. Odessa's interviews backed that up too. She spoke about Timothée with respect and admiration, but not in a way that felt charged or suggestive, just professional and warm. And honestly, the way she addressed the wig rumors later on the carpet was another reminder of how absurd some of these internet fixations have become. She handled it with humor, transparency, and a level of self-awareness that made the whole thing feel small and unserious, which is exactly how it should have been treated from the start. As the night moved on, the emotional temperature shifted, especially once Ariana Grande's category came up, because you could feel the weight of expectation surrounding her. This role meant everything to her. And that's not speculation, that's visible in how she's talked about it, how she's carried herself, how much of her identity she allowed to be shaped by Glinda. When she didn't win, the disappointment wasn't just about losing a trophy, it felt like the closing of a door she'd been knocking on for a long time. Watching her in interviews afterward, there was this quiet restraint in how she spoke about her tour and her future plans. She wasn't dramatic or bitter, but she also wasn't glowing. She sounded tired, like someone who gave a role everything they had and didn't get the kind of recognition that validates that level of sacrifice. I think people underestimate how disorienting that can be, especially when your physical appearance, your public image, and your daily life have been reshaped around a character that the industry ultimately doesn't reward the way you hoped. And while fans were understandably upset on her behalf, claiming she was robbed, I think it's important to sit with the reality that awards aren't just about time on screen or emotional investment. Amy Madigan's win, for instance, came from a performance that clearly struck a nerve with audiences in a different way. Her reaction to winning felt genuine, almost startled, and her speech reflected a deep appreciation for how people connected to her character. There was no triumphalism there, just gratitude. And I think two things can be true at once. Ariana can feel disappointed and deserving in her own right, and Amy can also be worthy of that moment. The industry rarely gives us clean, emotionally satisfying outcomes, and this was one of those reminders. Seth Rogen's speech cut through some of that heaviness with humor that actually worked because it came from a place of honesty. Joking about caring deeply what critics think and cancelling therapy because of a win wasn't just funny, it was relatable, and it highlighted how much validation still matters even to people who seem immune to it. Not all humor landed that night though, and Chelsea Handler's set was a clear example of that imbalance. Some jokes were sharp and playful, like the ping pong paddle bit or the jab at Leonardo DiCaprio's yacht situation, which felt silly rather than mean. But the Nicki Minaj comment crossed into uncomfortable territory, not because people are overly sensitive, but because it leaned on outdated framing that didn't need to be there. You could feel the energy shift immediately, and the backlash made sense. Comedy doesn't exist in a vacuum anymore, especially not on a stage like that, and moments like this highlight how quickly the room can turn when a joke misses the cultural mark. Fashion commentary floated in and out of the night like background noise, but some looks definitely sparked conversation. Ariana's gown felt soft and nostalgic to me, even as some people found it matronly. Kylie stayed true to her brand, which always invites debate, but there's something to be said about consistency, even when it's predictable. Timothée's more restrained look matched the seriousness of his moment, and Odessa's outfit brought personality and confidence without trying too hard. There were looks that felt experimental and others that felt safe, and honestly, that mix reflected the broader mood of the night. By the time everything wrapped up, what stayed with me wasn't the list of winners, but the emotional through line connecting all these moments. You could see someone stepping into a new phase of visibility, someone else quietly mourning the end of a dream, and an industry still figuring out how to balance spectacle with sincerity. It felt messy, human, imperfect, and real in a way awards shows don't always allow, and that's probably why people are still talking about it.